honor that I introduced our very special guest for tonight. From 1990 to 2005, he served as manager of the amusement park at Neverland Ranch, as well as being a friend of Michael Jackson's. I'm honored to welcome Big Al Scanlan. Welcome, Big Al.
And I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. All right. So how does a little boy
started?
Yes, go ahead. Sorry.
As I say, before I get started, if you look right above my hat here, just right above it, that's about where that tree is that everybody wants to know.
Oh, seriously? Okay,
so
it's a topic of conversation.
All bunched together.
Yeah, it's a topic of conversation at the moment, isn't it?
So we come in the main gate, go over the first hill, and then before you get to the house.
Yeah, when you come over the first hill and then you go through the arch gate it says Neverland on it.
Okay.
And you'll turn as soon as you go underneath the arch, you'll turn right and you'll be on this road right here.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And you go up here, the front of the house, that's the flower bed that you see in the pictures. They take a picture straight across and look at the front of the house, and that tree's about right there.
Okay, Mark. I know Mark's going to have a question for you later on that, so we'll save that for a minute.
All right.
How does a little boy from a small town in Montana make his way to the home of the most famous person on earth?
Well, it was a long, bumpy, rough road, let me tell you. I right out of high school, we moved from Montana to Scottsdale, Arizona when I was about 10, which was quite a treat because there's some pretty long, harsh winters up in Montana. And now we're down in an area where I can go swimming every day before I go to school and after I get out of school. The weather's pretty nice there. So that was kind of a shock. And, but after high school, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And, I just happened to have some friends we were playing pool and there was a carnival that was setting up out in the parking lot, and they came in and asked a couple of us if we were in this billiard parlor and asked us if we wanted to help set up. And, so we went out, it was a couple bucks an hour, $1.50 an hour. I don't remember what it was, but maybe it might have been $1 an hour. But anyway, we kind of followed them around Phoenix because we all lived at home and none of us were into traveling or anything, but I had graduated high school. And so I wasn't sure what I was doing next. And anyway, I wound up following them around for what I thought was going to be a summer, and it turned out to be about 16 years.
Wow.
And then I wound up working for a guy that I ended up on a fairly large carnival, and I was in charge of all the rides. And there was a guy that had a contract with the independent or self-funded insurance company for the fairs, all the agricultural fairs in California. And he inspected the carnival that I worked at several times in the summertime. And so we kind of developed a relationship, and I told him I was probably going to look for something else to do and, probably go drive a truck or something, because that's the only thing you really learn in the carnival business that you can take somewhere else and make a living at, unless you want to stay in the same business, just move to a different carnival, which I didn't really want to do. So anyway, he offered me a job working for him, and his company was the most prestigious safety consulting company in the amusement business at the time. And so I started, I did jobs all over Europe and Asia and all over the United States, going to big amusement parks and fairs and stuff. And anyway, several years after I started doing that, Mr. Jackson bought that piece of property right there and started putting rides in. And somebody that was involved in the original, I think it was Rob Swenson or somebody from Chance, recommended that you get somebody out there that can tell you how to, maintain this stuff and help you with your training procedures and whatnot. And so I started going out there a couple times a year, just, doing consulting work. And that led to me going to work there. So basically, I was involved, not as a full-time employee, but I was involved in some way, basically from the start to the finish. So
I've told you before, I think it's really amazing that you still refer to him as Mr. Jackson. It says a lot about you and respect I mean, for real, just that little thing, but to me, it says a lot about you. And I've always told you that.
Well, I mean, he was a pretty amazing person to be around, and I did have a ton of respect for him. And yeah.
It's nice. It's nice to see, especially in this, in this day and age and times we're living in. It's nice. Tell us the first time that you met him.
Well, I wish I had an aerial photograph of the amusement park, but if you go down this valley to the amusement park, there's the small train tracks run in front of the park, and one of the I think it was the first day that I was there that he was actually on property, and we got a heads up that the guests might be heading to the park, so it was kind of a warm day, so I went out to make sure there was some ground ice in the snow cone machine because it melted pretty fast, and snow cones were a popular item back then. So anyway, I'm grinding some ice, and I hear a rumble of the tires of the golf cart coming down the walkway where the train tracks are, and it stops, and I just keep doing what I'm doing, and I hear Michael say, "Sure is a hot day today, isn't it?" And I kind of just glanced over my shoulder and said, "Yeah, it is." Went back to what I was doing, and all of a sudden a water balloon hit me square in the middle of the back. And then I hear the rumble of the tires as the golf cart drives off, and I hear Michael say, "It wasn't me," which I guess it doesn't matter who it was. I was wet, but it was a hot day, and it was kind of refreshing actually, because I was wearing a black vest, kind of a formal outfit, black vest, white shirt, black tie, black dress pants, black dress shoes. And so, yeah, it was kind of refreshing. And I remember thinking to myself, as I was still grinding ice, I was thinking, this is going to be a fun place to work.
That's a good first impression, right? I mean,
yeah.
He always made amazing entrances on his concerts. That's like 31 years later, you can still remember.
Yeah.
My favorite story, the one of you and Michael at the picnic table under the oak tree.
Yes, that was another one of those. I mean, every day was a great memory there, whether he was home or not. It was a great place to work, and tons of memories from the different events. But there's a few that are, to me, were just incredible that I hope I never forget them, because they were just incredible moments. But yeah, there's a little building behind the Sea Dragon that houses some of the hydraulic drive equipment, and I have an office in there, and there's a break room and a room full of spare parts. And Mr. Jackson was on property, but there was no guest yet, so I was kind of I was in my office. I don't remember what I was doing, but I could tell that somebody walked in. My back's to the door, but I could tell somebody walked in, and I just kept finishing what I was doing, and all of a sudden it's Mr. Jackson. He goes, "Big Al," and I turn around and I go, "Oh yeah, what? Yeah." He goes, and I could tell that he had something he was going to ask me, but he's fixated on all this hydraulic equipment, which I guess he'd never seen before, because he had no reason to come in this room really, but it's a pretty impressive. It's probably 10, 12 foot long, a big hydraulic tank and pumps and hoses and motors and valves, and it's kind of anyway. He's looking at that, and he forgot what not forgot, but he wanted to change the subject from what he came in there to ask me. And he goes, "What is all that stuff?" So I briefly explained it to him without getting into a lot of technical stuff. I just told him that operates the Sea Dragon, and this does this, and this does this, and this does this, and he was listening to me. I mean, I could tell that he was like he thought there was going to be a test later or something. He was really intent on listening to what I was telling him. And I tell people, when I tell this story, I tell them, I said, I guarantee you, if he was alive today and we went in that room, he could tell you everything I told him. Because I mean, he just was really fascinated by it. And it wasn't like, it had nothing to do with music or dancing or whatever that I would think that he would be interested in. But
right.
He was just one of those people that had a thirst for knowledge, and whatever you were telling him, he was interested in it. So. But anyway, that wound up to, do we have anything we can play on the Jumbotron? The Jumbotron was set up in the amusement park, and I was told to play the animated version of Peter Pan, and that was it. But yet I had a rack in there of equipment that I could play. Well, there was no DVDs then. It was laser discs, VHS. There was still Beta, we had a machine that played whatever the TV that I think it's 3/4 inch. I mean, we could play anything, and I had hundreds of DVD or hundreds of laser discs and VHS tapes and all this stuff, but all I had to do was play Peter Pan. Okay. So he asked me, he goes, "Do we have anything else we can watch besides Peter Pan?" And I'm like, "All right." So, because I had it all memorized, I could recite you that thing word for word without even seeing the picture. I had heard it so many times. Actually, after a while, I guess you kind of go tone deaf to it, but. Anyway, so I opened the closet where all the laser discs were, and he started going through, and he's looking and looking and looking and looking and looking, and he pulled out the movie Hook, which isn't too far from Peter Pan.
Right, exactly.
But with the exception of live actors and a little bit different storyline. And he says, "Could you put this on?" I said, "Sure." Well, I figured he was going to go on his scooter and go back to, wherever, because he was by himself. So I really didn't think we were going to ride any rides or anything. And so he walked out, and he motioned me to follow him. So I followed him, and we walked out in front of the Sea Dragon. Then there's this huge sycamore tree there, and it's got some park benches underneath it, and a circular bench that goes all the way around it. And anyway, he sat down at one of these picnic tables in front of the, underneath this tree in front of the Jumbotron, and told me to sit down. And so I sat down, and we just started talking about whatever, just everything, everyday life, and this and that. And every once in a while, something would come up in the movie, and he would talk about, helping design that set, or being there when they filmed that, or whatever. I mean, it was, and we watched the whole movie like that. And I just when he left, I was just walking around on a cloud for the rest of the days. I just don't believe that I sat there and did that all day, just kind of a casual, hey, let's watch a movie, the only thing we're missing was popcorn, I guess.
Just like two regular guys just hanging out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But what a memory to have.
And we talked a lot about Neverland, and kind of, I could see it in his eyes and hear it in his voice, how important that place was to him, and what the stuff we did for the inner city kids and the kids in the hospital and whatnot. And so, yeah, it was a very pleasant afternoon for me.
Sure. That's a great story. The buses of the kids and the underprivileged kids, and talk a little about the letters that you would receive from the parents.
Yeah, I would get letters. Well, they were addressed to the ranch, but the office or the ranch manager would always make sure I got a copy of it, because I was involved in making the day happen. I mean, kind of coordinating the day. It was Mr. Jackson, obviously, that made it happen, but I kind of coordinated everything. And yeah, it was pretty heart-wrenching, because a lot of times the kids, especially the kids that were dealing with life-threatening illnesses, their families, well, their closest friends were usually their families or other people that had the same disease they did, because they spent so much time in the hospital, And so whenever we did an event like that, it was always, the rule was that kid can invite, their parents, their siblings, whatever they wanted, And so, yeah, it was the letters that you would get. I mean, it was, they just spent the entire letter, trying to make sure that you understood that was the biggest day of their life. They will never, ever forget that. And a lot of them, I stayed in touch for a while with one family. They're actually from Australia, and their boy had to have his leg removed because of cancer. And he was kind of a train enthusiast, and so I let him ride up front. Anybody that rides up, we didn't normally let people ride up front, but if somebody showed a real interest in steam trains, we would let them ride up front. And then I had a certificate that I just generated on a computer on certificate paper, but it had talked about Neverland Railroad and volunteer engineer, and I had them numbered, 001, which obviously we know who that went to.
Of course. Rightfully so.
So I said, I told him, I said, you have to write up front in order to get the certificate. Don't think you're getting any special treatment here, you know? So, but anyway, so they were numbered. And I think when that ranch closed down, I don't think we were over 200. So those things are pretty rare and
Wow.
few and far in between. But anyway, yeah, the letter from that family, that was, I mean, that kid was just, he was on cloud nine for a year after that, probably, you know, and
Sure.
I think if my memory serves me correct, he passed away not too many years after that.
Oh,
And they still, you know, contacted me occasionally, and, you know, what
wow.
an important day that was. And I just, you know, I mean, I was so blessed to be part of it. You know, I was just doing my job, but it was a very rewarding job when you get recognition like that, and realize that's something that those people are going to carry with them the rest of their
Sure.
lives. And it was a huge deal for them.
Sure. Okay. Tell us about AJ the chimp and the pop rock story.
Well, AJ, and it got explained to me later that I guess primates do sometimes find, I don't know the right word. I don't want to say attraction, but I guess they do kind of get attracted to somebody, and especially if it's a big person with facial hair, which I fit that bill. And how I found this out was we had a group that was kind of I don't want to say rowdy, but they were a little more energetic or they were a little high. They were high energy, and animals can only take so much of that, and then you just got, and with a chimp you got to be really careful because they are so strong. And the guy that handled the chimps had AJ in front of the movie theater, and there was a group of these kids, and they, you know, finally, you know, I could tell that I was about, I don't know, a couple hundred feet away. I was like over by the amusement park, but I could tell Marvin was like, I'm getting ready to get out of here. It's getting a little too. So I started walking over there just to see if I could maybe help get the kids, you know, over to the park or something. And I was probably still at least 100 feet away, and AJ saw me and jumped out of his arms and came running at me full blast. With the noise they make, they call it barking, but so he's barking, showing his teeth and running at me, and I think he's going to kill me. And he jumps up in my arms and holds on to me like, get me away from these people.
Oh.
So we developed a very strong bond there. And that's when Marvin explained to me that, you know, he says you're like a, you know, a big brother or father figure to him. And
That's nice.
So anyway, I went down to the zoo, which I went to the zoo a lot when we didn't have guests, because the animals were fascinating. We had a great crew of people working down there. And I'd go down there and listen to them tell me about this animal or that animal or whatever. But I always tried to stop by and see AJ. So I get a call from a person in the zoo, and I think we ended up taking the conversation to the phone. He said, well, you need to come down here, but park your golf cart like back at the reptile barn and walk the rest of the way up, because there were some people there from the movie industry that were recording sounds, and their equipment's very sensitive. And so I parked the golf cart and I started walking, and I called him on the radio and I said, tell those guys to get ready, because as soon as he sees me, he's going to start going crazy. So I'm walking down the railroad tracks, and as soon as I start to kind of make a little left turn there, he sees me and he just starts barking and barking and barking. And then of course, as I get up, he barks all the way up until I get up to the cage. Then he normally I have to stick my face right up against the cage, and he'll, like, you know, like they do each other, you know, he'll take my hat and he'll look at my hair, or, you know, or what. I remember one time I had a sunburn, and he was like, what is wrong with you? And he's touching my, you know, the skin peeling on my sunburn. But anyway, so he's calmed down, and he's not making any more noise. So they said, we need more. This is great. We need more. So I said, okay. I said, get ready. Okay, so they turn on their equipment. I said, AJ, I got something in my pocket. And I reached in my pocket, and he liked Pop Rocks. So so I pull out a package of Pop Rocks, and he sticks his lip like through the cage, and I pour him in. It's like chewing tobacco to him. I pour it in there, and he just like lets it sit in there, and you can hear it like I don't know if you've ever had Pop Rocks. But
Yeah,
they do,
sure.
they pop, and then they foam, and you can hear him popping in there, and he's got this kind of smile on his face, and his eyes are big, and then pretty soon green foam starts coming out of his mouth. So anyway, so we wait a minute, I said, okay, now get ready, because I have some more Pop Rocks, but he'll only bark for so long until I give him. So anyway, that was kind of a fun story, and they were very happy. And then they went around. They found out that I was in charge of the amusement park, so they said, well, can we come down there and record? I mean, because you can't believe the stuff they record, and they can record a Ferris wheel going around and just making these creaks and whatever, and it'll wind up in a movie that has nothing to do with a Ferris wheel. I mean, it's just, they use these sounds and they catalog them, and they have categories, and then I took them for a ride on the steam train, and they were just like, oh man, you would have thought that they'd won the lottery. They were so, all the noises it was making.
Sure.
So yeah, that was kind of an interesting day. Yeah.
I got two more, and then we're going to turn it over to Mark for a few questions. Okay. The Heal the World story from Munich.
Oh, let me see if I can figure out how to. So anyway, I'm not going to tell you who, but because it's his story if he wants to tell it, but he told me this part of the story, so I got to share it. Now, if you watch this video, this is the closing song in Munich, and he did Heal the World. And he's walking around, there's like 20 or 30 or 40 people in a circle, and they walk around the whole time they're singing the song.
Right.
This little girl is to Michael's back or right, I guess, as he's walking around in the circle. So he's almost done with the song, and he picks her up. Yeah, everybody stopped walking, and he's almost done. He got, like just a couple seconds left in the song. And he picks her up, and he finishes singing the song, and everybody gets escorted off stage. And anyway, the next day, she's at breakfast with her parents, and she goes, Daddy, do I get to dance with Michael Jackson again tonight? I thought that was pretty cool. So I'm sure
you can see in his eyes. I mean, you can see in her eye. Just look at her face, the expression like on her.
Yeah.
Wow. Anything about Earth Song while we're talking songs?
Oh yes, Earth Song. Oh my gosh. I think I already warned you. That's a hard story for me to tell. But
all right, we don't.
No. I mean, when I say hard, I mean it's one of my favorite moments out there. But I get a little choked up telling it just because it was probably one of my. I survived telling you the story about sitting under the tree with him, and this is kind of similar. He'd been gone for quite a while, and he came back. And again, we didn't have guests. And like I said, normally when there's no guests, he really doesn't come to the park and ride rides or anything, but he went into the movie theater. So I called the front gate, because I mean, whenever we have guests, we'll have a projections there, but I don't think the guests were scheduled to get there till the next day. So I didn't think there was a projection. So I called the front gate, and there's no projectionist. So I was going to go over and let him know there's no projectionist. And right as I walked over there, he walks out. So him and I are standing and I haven't seen him in months. I mean, he was working on the history album wasn't out yet. He had been working on it, and part of it I think was in California, but I think a bunch of it was done in New York or somewhere back east. And anyway, so again, he just starts talking about, been a long time, blah blah blah, and he starts telling me what he's been doing and working in it, blah blah. And he starts talking about Earth Song. Of course, now the album's not released yet, so I don't know anything about Earth Song. He wrote it, so obviously he knows about it, and he's been practicing it and recording it and whatever. So, but I'm standing there just listening to him talk about it, and he just kept. It went on and on and on, and I could tell that this was one of those songs that I tell people I think one of the Man in the Mirrors I think is an important song to him. And Heal the World. I mean, I'm sure all his songs are, but I think some songs just have a lot more heart to them. And
sure.
But anyway, he's going on about Earth Song, and I thought he was going to almost start crying. He was so passionate about this song, and how important it was to him, and he just went on. And I'm just like, I kind of wanted to go, well, do you have a demo I could listen to? I have no, I just acknowledged it and agreed to it. I'm like, when is that album coming out so I can get a copy of it? So, but it was another one of my really highly cherished moments, because it just, just getting to stand there, just me and him. Sure. And him being so passionate about that song and how important it was to him and sharing it with me. It was a pretty big moment for me.
I think it's in everybody's top 3, probably. I mean, yeah. Especially the live, it was so, right, yeah. I never got to see him. I saw him 21 times, but I never got to see him sing that one. And that would have been, all right. On a kind of a sad note, a week ago, we lost Siegfried Fischbacher from Siegfried and Roy, and I know he spent some time at the ranch. Any recollections, any stories about Siegfried?
Yeah, they weren't amusement park riders for sure, but they did spend they spent a whole day there, and I think they might have spent more than a day. But anyway, Michael's just kind of showing them around the place, and Siegfried walks over to the amusement park, and I'm standing over there just in case they want to do something. And he walks up and introduces himself and starts asking me about the carousel. And the more we talked, the more I realized, I mean, he knew that carousel was, all the horses were fiberglass. They weren't antique hand carved horses, but they were replicas. And he knew, each, the different wood carvers that were famous for carving this particular animal. I mean, he knew all. I mean, he was definitely a carousel enthusiast. He knew Philadelphia Toboggan was one of the big carousel companies back in the day that made all wood carousels, and the different carvers that worked for him, and he walked around. I showed him that there was custom artwork and custom poetry on some of these horses that were was done just for Mr. Jackson as per his request, and we had. Normally, if you have when they say carousels 2 abreast, 3 abreast, or 4 abreast, is how many horses wide it is. And ours was a 50-foot diameter. It was a 4 abreast carousel. And normally, the outside row will be what they call the jeweled row. Will have some. I mean, it's just little fake plastic stuff that looks like jewels on it. Some people, when they get fancy, they'll do 2 rows, where ours had 3 rows, and he noticed that right away. So it was, but it was kind of cool getting to. Just hang out with him for a few minutes and talk shop with him, so to speak.
Michael was really friends. He used to go to their rehearsals at the Siegfried and Roy at the Mirage, and we spent a lot of time down there. And you could, you feel his presence. It was pretty sad last week when he passed away. We actually had a memorial. We made a poster, and we had people sign and we left flowers there, so it was pretty nice. All right, we'll turn it over to Australia. Let's go down under. Mark,
right. I'm just sitting back and just listening to these stories, and can't help just to think about what it would have been like, Big Al. But hearing that story about the fella from down under Australia really touched my heart, and I guess that's a side of Michael that. Really didn't get a lot of exposure, and Michael probably didn't want that, but he did touch people. Yeah. He did touch people's lives through music, through charity, and that's the side that really just hearing that story blows me away. Look, my question, Big Al, is working out there for 15 years. What do you miss most?
Oh. Well, I've been asked that before, and I never really had a good answer. But then, since the ranch has been purchased, and somebody asked me, "Are you going back to work there?" And I said, "Well, first of all, I have no idea what they're doing with the place, and second of all, I don't think I could go back there without Michael being there." So I guess that would kind of answer the question. I mean, I just,
Did you? Sorry, go on.
I was going to say he wasn't there a lot during the tail end of, I was there during the tail end of the Dangerous tour and the History tour and being in the studio and whatnot. So it wasn't like I saw him every day. I mean, but it was such a blast to see him, because I just can't imagine what his life was like, being that famous, it's hard to go anywhere and do anything. And then just and his work to work as hard as he does on tour and in the studio, and so it was just really nice to see him come there and laugh and just have a blast, So yeah, that part of it was that's what I would probably miss the most, is just getting to see, because you could hear him laugh from one end of the valley to the other. I mean, that guy did not need a sound system. You could hear his laugh a long ways
Did you
away.
did you have a favorite part of the ranch, Big Al? Was there a favorite place of yours that every now and then you just went to during lunch or wherever it may be?
Yeah, I would say. I mean, I spent most of my time obviously in the amusement park, and on the trains you get to see the whole valley. But as far as like just getting away and hanging out for a few minutes, maybe having my lunch, God, I wish I had a picture of it. It's called the Sky Gazebo, and it was a wooden deck that was probably, I'm going to say about 50 foot by 50 foot, and it kind of went out. Half of it was covered and half of it was uncovered, and the half that was uncovered was kind of out over this mountain, and it overlooked the entire valley. And it was at the very, very top of the mountain. And it had some really nice furniture up there, and it had a big table. They'd had dinner up there before, and it was very peaceful up there, and you could see the entire valley, the lakes and the pastures and everything. And so that was, I guess, to just kind of get away and have my lunch or hang out for a few minutes and really clear my mind out. That was probably my most favorite place.
Was it a 7-day gig, Big Al? Like, did you go out there 7 days a week? What sort of hours? Like, how did it work?
Well, for my department, because we were very guest oriented, it changed on a regular basis, and we didn't have a really set schedule. We tried to work, a 7 o'clock. We'd be there at 7 o'clock in the morning and go till 3:30 in the afternoon, Monday through Friday. That's if that's just doing washing rides, changing light bulbs, greasing rides, typical maintenance kind of stuff. If we had guests, then usually guests, or if Michael was home, he was usually, that included weekends and holidays and everything. So we'd have to change our schedule up a little bit. Most everybody at the ranch didn't. I mean, the housekeepers and the chefs and my department and the zoo, we kind of had to be flexible, on the guest schedule. All the groundskeeper, which was a huge staff. I mean, there was actually several departments just in grounds. They pretty much stuck to kind of a regular routine, but for us, it was kind of at the mercy of the guests. And and I mean, I grew up in the carnival business where you worked 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. And you never looked at a clock. A clock never told you when the job was done. So it didn't really bother me. And there was enough of us in the park where we could, we still usually got, at least 1 or 2 days off a week. Sometimes the steam train became a little bit of an issue on that because there was only 2 of us that could operate it. So if we had guests there, or Mr. Jackson was home for a long period of time, then usually the 2 of us that ran the steam train just worked 7 days a week. And it's like I said, I never complained, and the other guy never complained. It was it was an okay place to go to work.
So talking about staff just for a moment, how many staff at one given time would be out there?
Well, I think when I went to work there full time, it was kind of in the prime of things, and I gotta believe on the payroll we had probably a little over 100 people.
Wow.
Yeah, but you gotta understand, we had I'd say the majority of that was just in grounds, because we had there's thousands of trees. that need maintenance. The yards, just the yard around the house was probably 40 acres.
Wow.
And you can see right behind me, the flower, there was flower beds like that everywhere. So it was, the grounds department was a pretty good sized staff. I had between 4 and 5 in the amusement park. The zoo had, I'm going to say they had at least a half a dozen or more there. We had our own fire department, and of course we had a security department, and then we had housekeepers and chefs, and I mean it was a pretty big. It was a 2,700 acre ranch. We didn't.
Yeah, massive.
We didn't have to maintain the entire. Go ahead.
How did staff know when Michael was, I guess, on property or was absent from the property? Was there a special way of sort of letting people know, or it didn't matter?
As a general rule, it was no matter if it was Mr. Jackson or guests, the majority of the ranch didn't need to know. So, and who came and went was really nobody's business. So there was, we would get a security clearance, and I would usually get a warning that, somebody was coming home, or we were going to have guests or whatever, just mainly so I could make sure that we had, because if Mr. Jackson's home or there was guests on property that were staying overnight, the rides would open at 10 in the morning and stay till 10 o'clock at night. So, and normally on a normal work day, I'd be there from 7 to 3:30. So obviously I don't care who's coming, but I need to know if somebody's coming so I can make sure that there's somebody there to run the rides. So, and so yeah, it was, I mean, it wasn't really highly advertised, and I mean, if you saw the projection show up with some film, you knew something was happening, somebody was coming. So.
All right, I'll hand back to you, Ron.
Let's go to Betsy. Betsy, questions for Big Al.
I have tons of questions.
Well, come on.
Okay.
Just looking at the train, I think about Michael's mom and wonder if he ever got her to ride the train, or if you had any train times where Mrs. Jackson rode the train.
Oh my gosh, that is such a great question.
I love it.
Well, the reason it's a great question this will sound self-centered, because it was another one of my moments that I was on cloud 9. The train, there's a beautiful plaque. God, I wish I had a picture of it. There's a beautiful plaque huge, it's like poster size. It's got a picture of Katherine when she was, I'm going to say, in her 20s or 30s. And underneath it had this beautiful thing that Michael wrote about this train was named Katherine, the steam train, not the train behind me, but the steam train was named Katherine, obviously after his mother. And it was one of the nicest looking steam trains you'll ever see. I mean, it had gold leaf pinstriping and gold leaf letters and rope lighting and plenty of brass and teak wood. I mean, it was just a beautiful steam train. And anyway, he had this nice little paragraph written about the dedication and time and effort that went into making the steam train beautiful. And then he talked a little bit about her raising all those kids, kind of a comparison about her raising all the kids and all the time. And I mean, it was a fantastic thing. So I'm like, I can't wait to take Katherine for a ride on the steam train named after her. And here, see, everything needs pictures to go with it. I'm sure that most everybody out there has seen some pictures of the inside of the steam train depot. It had a spiral staircase that went upstairs. There was a little sitting room up there, and it had some games and stuff. But there was a glass cabinet that when Mr. Jackson was home or we had guests, this cabinet was full of the most unbelievable pastries, because we're really close to Solvang, which has got some great pastry shop, old style Danish pastry shops, and so it was full. It had candy apples, and it had brownies that were like 2 inches thick, and I mean, it had all this stuff. And security calls. I was the only one there because the only guests on property I think we had more coming the next day, but that night was just Katherine and Reby. So I said, well, I'll stay late because I don't think anybody's going to ride the rides, but I'll stay late just because somebody needs to be here to turn the lights out and put the train away and whatnot. Okay. So I get a call from security that the guests went to the steam train depot. So I get my golf cart, and it's like, a half a mile from the amusement park to the steam train. So I go down, you go past the depot, the pictures that you see looking up the hill, you go past that, and there's a dirt maintenance road, about 100 feet past that, and you kind of come up the backside. I park my golf cart, and the first thing I do is I go down to the steam train and start it, because it takes a little while. I mean, I start it every once in a while, but as it cools off, you got to go back and start it. So I start it to make sure it's going to be full of steam. And I go in the, this is, I wish I had a picture of this. I start the train, I walk back up, and I open the doors into the depot, and I see Katherine and Remy, and they're leaning over this display case with all these pastries and stuff in them. And they're like hypnotized, they're like statues standing there. And they both look at me, and they both, at the same time, they both said, "How can you work in here with all this stuff?" And I've been known occasionally to be able to ad lib and come up with some kind of snappy answer really quick. And this came right out of my mouth. I said, "Well," I said, "actually, when I started working here, I was your son's size." And of course, I don't know if you can tell from this Zoom thing, but I'm 6'1" and weigh about 260 now. So, so I'm a long ways from Mr. Jackson's size. But anyway, they both just laughed and laughed and laughed. And then they said, "We'd like to go for a steam train ride." And I said, "It would be absolutely my honor to take you on the steam train ride." And I told them a little bit about the history of it, where it came from and where it went to get rebuilt and this and that. And it's a real honest to goodness steam train. It's not these aren't sound effects or anything. It's a real honest to goodness steam train. It runs on propane, not wood or coal, but it is a fire, real honest to goodness boiling water fire steam train. So anyway, that was quite an honor to get to take her for a ride on the steam train that was named after her.
Man, that's fantastic. Wow. People coming in. I wanted to ask
Amazon,
you about I wanted to ask you about the Easter egg hunts that used to go on at the ranch. I know that when we were on, I think the live with Ron, you had made a comment like that you were there. Someone had posted some photographs.
Oh yeah, somebody had a photograph of some Michael and some kids at an Easter egg hunt. I put down there I was there. I probably shouldn't do that, because somebody's probably get tired of hearing my name. But yeah, it was Mike, one of the guys that worked for me in the park. I think we were the only ones on duty that day, and I got called up to the house, and Mr. Jenkins, "Go out there and hide a bunch of eggs and make a map so I know where they're at." And then it was, I think we had actually a couple of them, you got to have a couple of the golden eggs. We had a couple of them that had like $1 amount on them. And of course, when you have a 20-acre backyard, it's, so anyway, they spent quite a while, and hunting them down. They got them all gathered up, and it was kind of funny because at the end, oh, and actually when they got done, one of the housekeepers said, "Hey, we have an Easter bunny outfit." And I said, I looked at Mike, because Mike was, I don't know, he probably weighed about, 130 pounds. So I said, "I guarantee you that bunny suit doesn't fit me." I said, "Mike," and Mike was all excited. He was like, I'm on it. So he went in, got dressed up like a bunny, and came out a little bit later dressed as a bunny. But anyway, so everybody's up there with their, eggs. And finally, I don't know how long it took. It took a long time to find everything, but it came time to pay up for the eggs that had dollar amounts on them. And Mr. Jackson looks at me and he goes, "Do you have any money?" And I guess that's happened before. I heard a previous Easter story from another person that had the same thing. And I guess, it kind of makes sense. I mean, he doesn't really need to carry cash around his pocket.
Sure.
It's like the kids are all like, "Hey, where's my $20? Where's my $10?" I'm like,
I love
"Big Al,
it.
you got any cash?"
Well, you probably learned after that to have a little cash on you.
What a
Next ti-
fun
next time
place
I'll
to
make sure-
work. My gosh.
Next time I'll make sure I just write $1 and $2 instead of 10 and 20 on it. So,
Wow. That's
Sure.
good.
Okay.
Just reflecting on that story. It's a great one. So I've got a sneaky question, Big Al, and you probably haven't got an answer for it, but we're chatting a lot about the giving tree. Did you ever get a sneaky climb in there yourself?
you know what? I never did.
Oh, Big Al.
I know. I look like, well,
It's the first place I'd go. I'd run to if the gates open, I'd run to the giving tree.
I gotta tell you, I thought I would never leave that place. So I guess I always looked at things like, always
Yeah.
looked at things like, I'll have my chance, I guess. So, yeah.
So I've got another one, Big Al, and it's probably, I'm not sure if you're able to answer it, but obviously there would have been fans camped out in front gate, every now and then. Did Michael ever go
There's
out
the
there
tree.
unannounced and say hello or
There's the
anything
tree.
like that?
Oh,
there's-
come on. Now
that's
you're
the tree.
torturing me, Big Al. That's not fair. What are you going to climb it now? You can transpose yourself to the tree?
Yeah.
Oh,
So, Big Al, Michael would have had fans camped outside the front gate. Did Michael ever go out there unannounced and just surprise them and invite them in or talk to them, or was that sort of?
Oh
Not
yeah,
something
yeah.
that he
Actually, that could turn into 2 or 3 good stories there.
Would like to hear it.
Yeah. He'd get on his little moped or one of the golf carts, and sometimes he'd just be, cruising around the ranch. He didn't have any guests there, and just maybe they were coming that night or the next day, and just kind of cruising around, checking things out. Hey, this is my place, and he'd go down the gate, and yeah, sometimes I've been, because security will call me because he'll tell them, tell Big Al we're coming to the park, or tell him to get the train ready. We're going to take a train ride or whatever, So yeah, that happened. That happened more than once, that's for sure. And then there's a really funny story. Solvang, if you've never been to Solvang, it's quite a neat little town, and they have some antique shops there. And there's been times when Mr. Jackson just hopped in sometimes you just take one of the old ranch vehicles, some old beat up minivan or whatever, but he would just like, I'm going to run into Solvang. He wouldn't take anybody with him. I'm going to run Solvang. And he'd hop in the van, run to Solvang, and go check out some of these antique shops. And people in that San Ynez Valley are not starstruck people. And they all knew he lived there. They're all kind of old school cowboys and ranchers, really, is kind of what it's made up of. There's some vineyards there and cattle ranches. And Solvang is a kind of a tourist trap. So, occasionally I'm sure he ran it. But anyway, he was in this antique store and checking some things out, and he went outside and got in the van, and there was an Asian family they were tourists there, and they were checking Solvang out and taking some pictures. And I guess what Mr. Jackson told me, the father of the family just like freaked out when he saw Michael, and he broke something on his car door trying to get it open or closed or something, and he went over and asked him if he could take a picture with his family and blah blah blah. And like, oh yeah, he was very accommodating. He goes, hey, you guys want to go to Neverland? Follow me.
Wow.
So there we got a caravan of minivans heading towards Neverland, and they'd taken a picture with Michael with his permission, but we didn't allow cameras in. So we got the front gate. Michael said to security, take their camera and give it back to them when they leave, and call Big Al and tell them, get ready. We're gonna, I want to show these people around and whatnot. So that was, I'm sure that had to be a huge day for those people.
Wow.
And then there's another story that I was there again. I think I stayed late that night, and it was just Mr. Jackson. And I think I stayed there knowing that nothing was going to happen, but I didn't want security to, nobody's here for the park, because he wants to see the steam train or the small train go around. He wants to see some movement every once in a while, or hear the whistle or whatever. So I was there. I figured it's just gonna be a low key day or night, and across the street there was it's called Midland School, and it's I think it's high school, but there's only like I want to say maybe 70 students. And it's like, I don't know what it costs to go there now, but back then I asked the headmaster when he came over, and it was like going to a substantial university to send your kid to this thing.
Wow.
And when I looked at the guest list, I mean, there's some names on there you recognize that, this kid's family is in the movie business or what, I mean, and anyway, since they were neighbors, he wanted us to occasionally do an event for them because they're neighbors, and so everything was organized. We'd get with the headmaster, and well, one night he just drove over there in his golf cart and said, I want everybody to come on over. So they're all walking across the street, and again, security called me. Surprise! So he goes, he said they're going to the arcade first, and then he wants you to have the steam train ready, and they're going to go down and watch. I think we're going to watch the ghost video. Yeah, because there's another story there that I got to tell. So, and then they're going to go to the park because they were limited on time because it's a school, it's a boarding school, and they have some kind of strict rules and regulations and whatnot. And so yeah, they went in the arcade for a little bit, and then they all came out of the steam train. I gave them all right down to the theater, and then I got them in the theater and got them watching Ghost, and then they came over and rode the rides. And I think maybe I did have one other person there because I don't think I could do that all by myself. I must have had somebody else there with me that night. But anyway, that was the night that, well, actually, I don't know if it was that night, but it was a Midland School night. I can't remember if it was that particular night, but one of the students, it was her 16th birthday. And whenever we show Ghosts, I always get up and tell a little spiel about Ghosts and about how Mr. Jackson plays 5 parts in it. And the first time you see him, you won't know it's him. And I tell him about Stan Winston and Stephen King. And I say, now, when the credits roll, you got to stay till the absolute end because it shows in the background, you can see some of the special effects and Michael getting made up and blah, blah, blah. And so I was impressed upon people. You got to stay until the projections turn the lights on. So anyway, they all get in there and I tell them, I give my little speech, and then I give the thumbs up to the projectionist. He starts it. And I go out front to steal a Reese's peanut butter cup, and Michael's standing out there, and so I have to wait to steal my peanut butter cup. And he goes, Big Al, he goes, is the dance studio unlocked? And we usually unlocked it only when he was home because he was really the only one that was supposed to be able to go in there unless we got a clearance on the security form from somebody else to use it. But so anyway, it's open. He goes, and it's a pretty good size room. I'm sure you've seen pictures of it, or you can find pictures of it. It's a big, this whole wall is glass, and this whole wall is sound system. And it's just a big, it's probably at least 20 foot or 30 foot wide and probably 50 foot long. It's just a big dance floor and got some spotlights up in the ceiling. And well, towards the very end, there's an old fashioned high back wooden rocking chair, and he goes and sits in it and this guy's back to the door. And prior to going in there, he tells me, he says, when the credits start rolling, and he says, go in there and get the girl whose birthday it is and bring her in the dance studio. And I'm like, I wanted to tell him, well, didn't you hear? I told them they had to stay for the credits, but I said, okay. Well, and I don't know whose birthday it is, right? So I wait till the credits start, and I go to the headmaster who's sitting all the way on the right side, all the way at the back. So I go to the headmaster and I said, hey, there's a girl in here. It's her birthday, right? Yeah. So he points her out. So I go over and I tap her on the shoulder and I tell her, I said, you need to come with me. Somebody wants to talk to you. And she looked kind of shocked. I don't know if it was from me or the combination of that and telling somebody wants to talk to her. She thought she was in trouble or something. But like, what is this guy? What's he doing? And I said, no. I said somebody's in the dance studio here and they want to tell you something. And she's really paranoid. I opened the door, and you could just barely see the top of his fedora. You can't really tell that there's somebody sitting in the chair. So and it's got a little, I mean, the guy's a showman. He knows everything. I mean, he just knows how to do it, you know. The chair's at a little bit of an angle, you know, so I think you can see maybe, you know, the tip of his loafer or something. She walks up, and like as soon as she gets almost to where she can see there's somebody in the chair, he kind of spins out of it and goes down on one knee and grabs her hand and sang happy birthday to her.
Oh my God.
I
Wow.
almost died. I mean, I get teary eyed right now just talking. I mean,
That's
my
fantastic.
hair stood up, and I'm like,
That's fantastic.
I'm like, I wanted to give her my business card and go, you know, you're going to tell somebody this story 20 years from now. They're going to go, no way, no way.
Right.
I said, I'll vouch for you. It happened.
Right?
So yeah, and that was just, I mean, that was the cool. I mean, once they played the arcade, he was with them the whole time in the arcade and on the steam train. I mean, he could have went back to the house and said, yeah, I'll see you next time or whatever. But no, he stuck there and sang happy birthday to her, and
Wow.
that was awesome. That was awesome.
How special.
Wow.
Oh my goodness.
Hey, Big Al, just one quick one. So back, I think it was in the theatre room. I noticed when Oprah was interviewing Michael, she said something around it's amazing to see how, you know, you built hospital beds into your architecture. Are you able to share a story that would be nice?
Absolutely. I'm looking again. See, I have to remember this. I'll have to send some pictures, and you'll have to post them whenever you post this on YouTube. You'll have to post some pictures. I'll have to send them to you to go, because I don't know. I think it kind of adds to the story a little bit. But anyway, so the movie theater. I mean, you can find hundreds of pictures of it. If you see a picture where it's facing the chairs are facing you, like you're standing at the stage, and you'll notice that in the very center up above, there's a little. Not very high up, there's a window. That's the projection booth. And then to the right and to the left, you can see a window, and those are actually bedrooms with hospital beds in them. And they have a glass that rolls up and a curtain that closes. So if a child is there during an event and needs a medical treatment or is feeling ill and just needs to get away, and depending on what kind of treatment, sometimes they need a little privacy or whatever. So I mean, those rooms were designed specifically for that reason. And I remember a friend of mine who I used to inspect rides with, when I started working there full time, I told the ranch manager, I said, we still need to have somebody independent. Now that I'm working here, we need to have a person like me come in and inspect the rides. And this friend of mine, I threw the job to him because I knew he was a good inspector, and I knew he would understand the confidentiality of being at Mr. Jackson's home and whatnot, and be careful with the pictures. And I didn't even think about this when I'm kind of giving him the nickel tour of the ranch. I didn't even think about this. His son had leukemia when he was very young, and he did survive it, but it was it was an incredibly emotional time for my friend and his family and everything. And you'd have to know this guy to really appreciate his story. He's one of those guys that always tries to come across like he's kind of grumpy. You know, he puts on this, persona, like everything's real serious and grumpy and all that. And I'm telling you what, he just about broke down and cried when he saw those rooms for those sick kids. He was like, man, this is unbelievable. Well, that story is a little emotional, so this one's a little emotional. So I'll try and get those out of the way right now. So
Okay.
in case I have to go,
All right.
in case I have to go get a tissue or something.
All right.
I got to be pretty good friends with, and wound up actually taking care of a kid with cystic fibrosis for quite a few years. But when I first got to know him, and I arranged for him to come to the ranch with one of our, I think it was other CF kids, other cystic fibrosis kids. And but since he was kind of he came as a guest with this group, but since he was my personal guest, I kind of, after the event was over, because he came in a separate car with a friend of his, I kind of gave them got to show them some things and where I work, where my office is, just some of that stuff. And this kid was, he loved like Lollapalooza. I don't know. I'm sure that some people out there still remember Lollapalooza, but it was, it was kind of headbanging. I don't know exactly what you'd call it, but he didn't listen to Michael Jackson music. And this kid, and I don't know if you've ever been around, got to know any kids that are terminally ill, but generally they are philosophical way beyond their years. And I'm sure it has to do with what they're dealing with. But, and he was a really scrawny kid because of his illness. He was, probably weighed about 80 pounds and we're all done and we're sitting down in the park and he's looking around and I can tell he's like really thinking about something. And he goes, and this is after experiencing a day as being a guest of Mr. Jackson's at Neverland, getting to, do everything, the arcade, the train, the theater, everything, the amusement rides. And he's looking, he's got this serious look on his face. And I'm like, I just like looked at him, acknowledged him because I knew he was going to tell me something. He goes, I don't know if I like Michael Jackson, the entertainer, but I know I would like Michael Jackson, the person.
Wow.
That really hit me.
Wow.
Wow.
Oh. Oh my gosh, that's powerful.
Yeah.
Just shows you the example that he gave.
I mean, he got it. He understood. He got it. He understood what it was all about, and it, he acknowledged it. And I was really glad that he said that. It meant a lot to me to hear it.
Thanks for sharing that, Alan. I can tell what it means to you. We need, we need more stories like that. I mean,
yeah.
Everybody knows the hits and the music. We need the people to him to come out and that this is the real.
Well, that's why I always tell everybody. I said, you got to keep his music and dance alive. But I said, people got to know, because the whole time we operated Neverland, people did not have a clue. I mean, they knew we did something out there, but they didn't. And I didn't. When I went to work there, I thought, this is going to be boring. I said, I'm going to sit around here and wait. I'm going to be sitting around here waiting for Mr. Jackson to come home. And then, then I find out that all the stuff we do, and it's and he did, he absolutely did not do it for the publicity, because there was.
Yeah, because nobody knew about it. Exactly.
There was times in his career there was times, and we won't talk about those, but there was times when his marketing people said, we got to come out there and we got to publicize this. And I remember hearing him saying, he goes, you're not going to use this place or those kids to promote me. Figure something else out. And I got to tell you, if I was in the position he's in, I'd have said, go for it.
Yeah.
And that just really told me that he absolutely did that 100% out of the kindness of his heart, that he opened that place up, built that place, and spent all those millions of dollars for those kids to go out there and forget about their troubles for a day.
Touching, really touching.
I remember reading or seeing, maybe Mrs. Jackson in an interview talked about how she was sitting with him and they were watching TV, and some of those commercials would come on with all of the hungry children and the children that were starving all over the world, and that he looked at her and said, Mother, one day I'm gonna make a difference. I'm gonna do the best that I can to eliminate that. And I think that just hearing your story is really who the man was. Is like he had such a passion to help people and not get the credit for it. It was just so beautiful. Wow.
I always make jokes with Mark and Betsy when we're talking about something and we're trying to make a decision on, should we post this? What should we do? I'd say WWMD. What would Michael do? And it's not always the easy answer. As a matter of fact, it's always the harder answer. But if you live your life like the way he did, like that's what we have to take from him. Kinda.
Yeah, and I'm sure some people can look at my stories or other people's stories, and it's like, oh yeah, well, what's the big deal? Why are you doing that? You're just trying to hide the other stuff and blah 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 blah. And that's not the point. Is that this is truly him. This is what he's all about. This is the real Michael Jackson, and people need to know that.
Yeah.
I mean, the fans obviously you know, they're fans. They understand that, but other people need to. I mean, they need to know the truth. They need to know the truth of what kind of person he was.
Well,
Yeah,
it's
really,
Well,
really
people like
touching.
you that, oh, sorry, Mark.
I was just saying it's a really touching story, and you know, and going back to my earlier point, you know, that side of Michael is the side that, you know, obviously wasn't publicized, and it's just that's the man in Michael. You know,
Yeah.
it's really, really, really. Thank you for sharing that story, Big Al.
Yeah, thank you.